Welcome to the Hardwater Fishing Show. Jeff and Jason talk tactics, gear, and ice fishing legends.
I bet you're going fishing all the time, my baby going fishing too. I bet your life, your sweet wife will catch more fish than you. Many fish bite if you got cool bait, yeah, here's a little tip I'd like to relate. Many fish bite if you got cool bait, yeah, I'm going fishing, my baby going fishing, I'm going fishing too.
Welcome back, everybody. We're on the Hardwater Show, Season 2, Episode 8. It's the first week of February 2019. You can find us anywhere podcasts are, including Spotify, Apple iTunes, and such. We are increasing our participation on social media, Instagram and Facebook. And please email us at hardwatershow.com. If you have pictures to send us, that's probably the best way to send us pictures. You can post them on our Facebook show site as well if you just want to show folks on Facebook. When you email them, sometimes we try to put them on Instagram. And so that works really well for posting on Instagram. We also have our gear. You can go to our our website for that. And we're collecting a lot, Jeff. I don't know if anybody else is buying it, but we are buying it. So that's what's cool.
So, funny story, one day I'm like, ooh, we made a sale today. And then my dad called me later that day and said, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you, but your mom just ordered a t-shirt.
So I'd like to give a shout out to the Redbubble site that we do our merchandise through. If you have a small club organization that you want to have gear for, it's really a great site to use because you don't have to maintain any inventory. People can order on demand, and they can order whatever size they need, and you don't get stuck with like 28 small T-shirts that say, soccer 2010. So anyway, it's worked really well for us to buy our own gear.
It is a great way to support the show. We do get a little bit of money from it, not a ton, but there are costs for production and for hosting the podcast and stuff. So if you want a cool t-shirt and you want to help out the show.
Yeah. And not to mention, you'll be the coolest person around too. I've
shown the t-shirt, and I think my wife, I took a picture of her with the sweatshirt on, so you can go on Instagram and see a couple of those.
Well, and we could fast forward to beverages if you want, because this is timely. I'm actually drinking my coffee this morning because we're podcasting this morning versus usually we do at night.
Yeah, it's the first time, Jay. Like, we always podcast at night, and it's hard to find time. And guess what? This morning we're doing the morning podcast.
We are.
So our beverages, I can't drink beer
I can, but I've got to bring a bunch of kids to a thing later, and I thought it'd be bad to come there smelling like beer.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm being a responsible adult this morning.
My daddy smells like beer.
I know. Get in the car with Jason. It'll be fine. No, don't do that. No drinking and driving. Bad deal. So I'm drinking my coffee this morning. Actual coffee.
So do you have any specifics
it's
on your coffee?
Black coffee.
It's just black.
Yes. It's not fancy coffee.
So, Jay, do you drink coffee? I was expecting you to show up with like a Diet Mountain Dew or something.
In the interest of health, I'm off Diet Mountain Dew for now.
Oh, yeah, really?
I don't know that it'll be long term, and I don't know that it won't relapse. But I'm not on that. But now I'm craving it. Thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate your support.
How about those other things? You did drink those Kickstarters.
I did. I'm off Kickstart. And I'm back to an occasional Rockstar or Monster, which I don't know. The caffeine's healthy for you. It keeps your brain thinking and body moving. So, and my doctor, I don't tell him about that stuff, so then he can't tell me I shouldn't. So it all works out.
It's like you didn't say no.
Yeah, you didn't say no, so it's all good. You should have. Now, if he asked me, I wouldn't lie to him, but he didn't ask,
Right.
so I'm in good shape.
Okay.
Okay, so Jeff, what kind of fancy coffee are you drinking this morning?
So I am drinking Starbucks breakfast blend, and I make that in my Black & Decker, normal coffee maker. It has some peppermint mocha creamer in it. That's my favorite thing to drink coffee
Peppermint
with.
mocha.
It used to come out only at Christmas. So I used to only be able to get it at Christmas, but they got wise to the fact that people like it all year round. So I just drink it all year round.
Well, that's good. It's so complicated to get coffee anymore. You go into a gas station and it's like, I want just a coffee, and there's like 29 things you can put flavors in it. And...
My favorite that I have a problem with. So at work, we have a little coffee shop inside the building. My favorite is the large Americano with just some regular cream, which I'm assuming is like half and half or something. That is so good because it's 3 shots of espresso, and that'll wake you up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, coffee is an important part of ice fishing. I mean, I think as much as you like to have a cold one ice fishing, sometimes you need something warm. And so, and we're going to talk a little bit about the old polar vortex this episode too. So the coffee theme fits kind of right into the keeping warm on the ice.
This year was the first time now with the wheelhouse, Jay, with the ice cave. When I was on Mille Lacs this year, I have had coffee in the morning when I fish. So you just wake up, you put the coffee maker on, and I have a Keurig one, so it has little things because that's a lot easier to tote around.
Yeah,
than
sure.
The whole,
yeah,
right, because you can just bring the little things and you put them in there, and you just need like your bottle of water, and you can pour it in the little reservoir and make 1 cup of coffee. And so it was pretty awesome. You wake up and you realize your rattle reels are still fishing because you haven't caught a fish yet. But, so you've been fishing, and then you just go, you get your coffee out of your Keurig and you put your creamer in it, and then you have your coffee.
That's really idyllic.
Pretty cool.
I mean, they should almost like create a commercial off of that.
One of those things that you just think about even before it happens, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
That is we have
You've evolved.
Reached the pinnacle. Yes.
We've
evolved.
I don't know. Maybe not. Hard telling.
Somewhere the super mobile, super light ice fisherman is turning over going, what are these guys talking about?
Yeah, he's squeezing some coffee gel out of a little piece of plastic like the long distance runners into his mouth and cursing us. Coffee gel. I think that's a thing. I don't know. It's got to be. I'm sure it is. Gel. So our theme song. Did we talk about this last time or not?
So we talked about it last time, but I don't think our listeners had a chance to listen to it, because last time was the first time that is the intro and the exit to our podcast. So we talked about Trapper Shep, and the Fishing Blues, the song that he let us use for the show, but it was hard to appreciate it until you've heard it, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's awesome, and I really appreciate it letting us use that. It's really cool. Kicks the whole thing up just a notch. It
does. I mean, we're just this humble little show, and he allowed us to use that. I mean, this is a real artist who plays real venues and tours, so it's pretty cool. So I would say encourage you to go check his music out. I use Pandora, and so I went on Pandora, and he has a whole bunch of music on there, and I really like it. So I think it's on Spotify also. I don't know about like Amazon Music, but I know it's on Pandora and Spotify for
Maybe
sure.
He'll take us on tour, and we could just sit up in front of the audience and do a live podcast.
That would be awesome. Maybe we should just send him a t-shirt and he'll wear our t-shirt on
because
stage.
After that, like, the fans would be like, anything that comes after this would be better. So
yeah,
we're a good opener.
You get up there,
we're a good opening act.
Jason, what are you drinking tonight? And then there'd be a hush along the crowd.
Well, there's like that Wisconsin, isn't it? Wisconsin Public Radio does kind of a Lake Wobegon or whatever the Prairie Home Companion in that show.
Yeah, that's Minnesota.
That's Minnesota. Okay, I probably just I didn't know. I don't know. It's all up north.
In Minnesota, everybody knows. So.
Well, I'm not in Minnesota, so I don't know. All right, we should move on. Our intro has been like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose we should move off of intro, Ajay.
Off of intro and into fishing-ish.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about fishing.
We have.
I mean, coffee and
Coffee
fishing.
and you padding around in your Superman pajamas, drinking coffee.
I do not have Superman pajamas.
You more of
on.
a Spider-Man guy?
No, I would say Iron Man. Iron Man is probably
I was
my
on
favorite.
Transformers when I was a kid. They're kind of weirded out now, but they were pretty cool back in the day.
I can't do the Transformers movies anymore.
No,
They're just
running, yelling,
just
running, yelling, running, yelling. Things exploding, transforming. There, I just summarized the last 4 movies. All right. So, Polar Vortex.
I have heard the Bumblebee movie is good. though,
My
Jay.
17-year-old just went with his special lady friend the other day, and they didn't like it. So, yeah, it didn't
really?
pass the teenage perspective in this house. So, which means I'll probably love it.
Yeah. He has a special
He
lady
does.
friend?
He does. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It creates all sorts of extra supervision work for me.
Is he driving the new
Oh,
pickup?
yeah. The 1990
Oh.
pickup. Yeah. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's another story. We better get to fishing.
We should. So Polar Vortex it's been cold. I don't know if it's been cold where you are, but it's been cold here. Holy crap.
Did you see this picture I dug up? I mean, obviously you can't see it on here, but this was Red Lake quite some years ago. Oli and I have ski goggles and ski masks on. It was that cold.
Yeah, see, I never get because my glasses fog up, so I just gut it out. My beard, I grow a full beard every winter because I can't wear a face mask because my glasses fog up.
Yeah, so it was minus 30 plus here.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cold.
Yeah, we were about negative 28 down here in the south. South of you. But it was cold. And people were out fishing, which is awesome. And you know, if we had had a trip planned, we would have been fishing.
We would have.
And we fished our coldest time that I recollect was negative 40 at Stone Lake, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
But that year at Red was colder because it was like negative 20, but it had wind.
Oh, the wind was nasty.
Negative 40 and calm isn't bad. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's not bad. It's that wind that gets you. It's that wind chill that'll get you. Kind of like the humidity in the summer.
Yeah, I remember setting up our shacks on Red, and we could barely hold them up. Like they weren't the hub shacks that like to blow away. This was like a suitcase that we had out there, and yeah, I mean, you didn't want to leave that thing because it was going to go flying if you let it not be attended.
Yeah, and then last year, I mean, we had some really cold weather as well on Vermilion. Or not Vermilion. I keep saying Vermilion, but Leech. We were on Leech last year.
It was Leech. It was on Leech Lake. Yeah. I remember we drove there because, of course, when you're ice fishing, wherever your cabin is, you need to fish at least 5 miles.
Yeah, that's only 101.
Although I think this year on Devil's Lake, we have that fixed because supposedly the bay we're in is supposed to be good. So we're not supposed to have to leave the bay. Now, the bay is probably as big as Leech
6
Lake,
miles long.
but yeah, but
we'll find a hole.
Anyways, but yeah, last year I remember it was so cold. Oh, all right. Well, let's. That was just kind of a preview we're talking. Let's go to the fishing report and reader news, and we'll get back to our.
Sounds good.
I guess this is kind of the same thing, but last 2 weekends it has just been too stinking cold to go out. So I have not been fishing, but I am going today. So I don't have an updated report from last podcast. I would drive by the lake on my way to work. I would see people fishing out there, and it was minus 28, minus 30, but I don't know. I don't think the fish bite really great when it's cold, so I didn't fish. I don't know. Did you get out, Jay?
No, I've been plowing snow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The other problem, work.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is not even work. It's just extra. just extra stuff. No, I have not. I don't even want to say what I'm going to try to do tomorrow because it'll jinx me and it won't happen. So I'm not even going to mention it.
All right. So Alex O asked us a while ago about bass fishing through the ice. I've seen a bunch of social media pictures with bass fish, on the ice. And it's not something I typically target, but I don't know if people are targeting more, if I'm just more sensitive to it because Alex O told us about it. But I read this cool article in the Midwest Outdoors, and it was called Slow and Steady Bass Fishing Through the Ice by Steve Matson. And he had a couple tips. I mean, this isn't a big shocker, but bass slow down in the winter, just like every fish.
And like people,
right?
I mean, people tend to slow down too. Everything does.
I do. I slow down. I eat more pizza and don't go outside as much. Yeah, true. This was interesting to me. So his recommendation was you fish like you would fish panfish, which I never thought of before, but makes sense because when I have caught them through the ice, like think about Stone, we were fishing for panfish.
Yeah.
When we caught those.
And we catch some on tip-ups too.
Which would be more northern walleye setups.
Yep.
So maybe you can catch them on panfish tackle, but you can also catch them on walleye tackle and northern tackle. So maybe they just like anything. Did he
talk at all about where? Like, do you change where? I mean, because I think fish tend to congregate within certain areas.
It did say, and this was another kind of a related thing I was reading about, was in the winter, a lot of fish, especially once it gets later in the season, go deep. And I've always had this theory that they go deep, but I've never really understood why. But I don't know if there's always themes or you start reading things, but their reasoning is where the shallows are and where the weeds are, where they were kind of equating both of them to shallow and weed beds, is that the oxygen levels start to get lower because those weeds start to die off, right? Mm-hmm. Because, early in the winter, they're green and, they're maybe getting some light through the ice. But as the winter goes on and the ice thickens up and the sun can't get to them, then those weeds start dying off. And that makes low oxygen levels, where if they go out into the deep areas, there's more oxygen and they like more oxygen. So that was the idea, was I suppose maybe early season you would find them, but they seem to say all bass kind of migrate into that deeper, more oxygenated water because of the weeds.
And that's absolutely correct. And that's part of that, finding that spot. When I was listening to one of the fisheries guys talk, he spoke about that, of figuring out where that oxygenated water is, and that's where you're going to find the fish. The fish are only going to go below that or above that for a short period of time, because they're holding their breath, I guess. Do fish hold their breath? Probably not. But the water, there's not enough oxygen in the water. Knowing that is key, I think, to locating the fish on the lake you're on and where that level is, because they'll be right at that level oftentimes.
And a lot of that too changes, right? Because early, like I said, there might be more oxygen towards the weeds and they like that cover, but as the season goes on, they might go to the deep.
Well, and that's because, I might not be right on this, but that's the thing we always do on this show, is we may or may not be giving you accurate information. So mileage may vary.
Your mileage may vary.
But I think the weeds die, right? They start dying, and then because they die, they release carbon dioxide, which reduces the oxygen in the water, versus photosynthesis, which would create oxygen in the water. What do you think about that? Does that sound reasonable?
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
I probably am.
I think our college degrees are paying off.
I don't know that we'd have to get Dave. Dave would know that kind of stuff.
Dave, yeah, he was a biology major. I mean,
yeah, he would know
computer guy over here. We didn't do too much photosynthesis.
No,
can't even say the
social
word.
Work we didn't either. We could talk about your feelings about it and how you use it in the social structure of your life, but really nothing to do with why.
And I could write you a program that acted like photosynthesis was happening, but I wouldn't know about the real plant.
That's why we have Google, boys and girls. All right.
So the other thing that they said was light tackle, of course, going after the panfish angle, which might be just what he does, because I think we've caught bass on every kind of tackle. And the reason for the small stuff was they were saying that bass get slow in the winter. So if you're slow, you're not like looking for a giant meal. It's not Thanksgiving, right? You're just looking for a snack. You're just looking for something to kind of, hey, I don't have to work very hard. There's this tiny jig in front of me. I could just kind of open my mouth and it would just go in my stomach and I wouldn't have to.
Do you think that's their actual thought process?
I don't know. I mean, it'd be like, I equate it. I don't know if that's their thought process because I'm not.
Is
a
it
fish.
like equates to like a bowl of peanut M&Ms on your desk at work?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Yes.
Versus like a steak you had to cut up. I'd still eat the steak, man. I don't know. But I'm not a fish.
But I equate it to like a M&M on your desk versus having to go to the break room and get, a bag of M&Ms out of the machine, right? I mean, that's
okay. I'm with you on the analogy. In speaking,
it's winter.
In speaking of eating, I would mention, at the risk of offending our hardcore summer bass fishermen, but I don't really care because that's summer, is you can eat these largemouth in the winter if your particular state has open season on them. Some close, so be aware of that. But in the summer, I don't eat largemouth because the meat gets real mushy. But in the winter, you don't have that issue, especially mid to late winter. If the season's open, I mean, they're good eating, so feel free to grab one to fry up.
My understanding is that largemouth is open, but smallmouth is
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota.
Okay. Yeah.
So the final tip they had was just the wide hook. I don't know. This was interesting. They said, if you have a wider hook, it's easier for them to get in their mouth because they have a big mouth.
They do. That's why they're called largemouth bass.
Oh, except the smallmouth bass doesn't really have that smaller of a mouth than the largemouth bass.
But comparison, if you ever put one side by side, they do.
I see. So wouldn't it be more accurate to call it the smaller mouth bass, not the smallmouth bass?
No. No. But you use a big hook in the summer to catch them too. So one of the articles I read on it is you can use some of the same type baits too if you're jigging, like a Cinco worm, where they just, it just kind of, have you ever used Cinco worms for catching bass, Jeff?
You're going to have to tell me. I'm not a huge bass fisherman. I mean, I'll fish for anything, but I don't typically target bass a lot, so I don't know what a Cinco is.
A Cinco, it's just a plastic bait worm, and I think it's Japanese, and they work really great for bass, Cinco worm, and you rig them, for summer fishing, you rig them differently, obviously, than you would for winter, but it just has a certain action to it that bass really like to eat. So I'll send you a link to the Cinco worms.
Cool.
So we can put it on our site.
Can you wacky rig them?
Yeah.
That's what I know about fishing is you put the worm sideways and wacky
Yeah,
rig
you can do
right?
some of that. You can Texas worm rig them. You can actually they do best with no weight at all. They kind of flutter and float through the water, and they got a little heft to them on their own.
So they sink.
Cinco. Maybe that's why they call them Cinco worms. I don't know.
Cinco.
I don't know if I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it right. But my little brother showed me these during the summer, and somebody showed him, and they're just killer for bass. So
that's what we know and don't know about bass fishing through the ice. Let's move on to Iowa, Jason. I feel like as the fellow resident from Iowa, you need to talk about Cole here and his report.
Yeah, we got a email from Cole who says he enjoys the podcast, which is great. He said extremely pure, which is a great description of us. We are pure. And I appreciate that little nod to our purity from Cole. And he's been fishing some of the big ones in Iowa, up Okoboji over Christmas break, and Big Spirit in northwest Iowa. And those are two, there's a couple of those lakes up there like Okoboji and Big Spirit that are natural lakes, other than the rest of us in Iowa that we make the rest of our lakes. So those are actually natural lakes, and they're really good fishing. And so he had a great opportunity to get up there, and then he got out on Don Williams, Brushy Creek, and Big Creek, which are in his area. So those are all pretty common places to go. And on that topic, I want to thank him for reaching out and fishing, and that he likes the show. But it also reminded me of the fact that with the invention of Facebook, a lot of, at least in Iowa, and I bet as well in Minnesota, area-specific Facebook groups pop up for a particular lake. And so if you have a lake you like to fish, it makes sense to search that and see if there's information on the lake that you're fishing available to you, kind of an up-to-date fishing report, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I have a Facebook group, and it's not to the lake, but when I go to Mille Lacs, each resort kind of has their own, because they'll put things about ice conditions and, what kind of shacks they're letting out in Mille Lacs. And so I use those quite a bit, and it's not lake specific, but it is because the resort's on the lake, right? So I haven't seen a lot of lake specific, like Lake of the Woods group, but I've seen a lot of, I go out of Arneson's Rocky Point, or I go out of, Beachside in Mille Lacs. So, and those are really handy because, those guys will always tell you the fishing's great because that's kind of their job, right?
Yeah, and usually they tell us it was great yesterday.
Right. It was great yesterday. Here are 2 of the 5 million trophy walleyes that were pulled from the ice in the last 2 hours.
Yeah. And then they shut off as soon as you guys got here.
You should have been here last week.
A quarter for every time.
but they're still useful, right? They still help you get out there and get fishing.
Yeah. Very cool. So thanks to Cole from Iowa. We appreciate you reaching out, and who knows, maybe I'll run into you on one of those lakes, because I definitely, those are some of the ones that I try to get to. That Don Williams, I've driven by that like 100 times going to pick my kid up at school in Ames. So, but now she's graduating, so I probably won't go back there. But my son may be going there, so then now I'll know, hey, honey, I'm going to see Caleb at school. I like this. This could work. Once a week. Okay, and then Drake.
And I don't think he's the singer Drake. I'm assuming. I don't think he's from Iowa.
Well, if he is. He's probably this gentleman Drake is out plowing, listening to the show. I don't suspect that the Drake the singer does a lot of snow plowing, but maybe it's a thing he does. Jeff put on the show notes that I may have a special connection because I'm out plowing. I don't get to listen to anything when I plow unless I put in my headphones, because my truck only has an occasional speaker that works, and generally only if you hit a snow pile hard enough. So I think it makes a connection in the truck somewhere. I
have to break in and encourage you though, Jay. You should really find a couple other podcasts. Obviously listen to ours because it's, great, but that's all I do in the car now, podcasts.
I've been listening to them back and forth to work. Yeah, good. I've been doing that. And I've been listening to some fishing ones and some other work-related ones that I've been listening to. So yeah, I do a lot of work-related ones too, which aren't as much fun. But, I do spend 50 hours a week working. So, yeah, probably need to get better at that too. Lord knows. Ian, and we're hoping to have Ian on the show coming up here. I don't have a date yet. He has 4 personal bests this year, which I'm super jealous of. He had some pictures of 4 different species of fish that were his personal best, and at least one of them I have never caught before. So I would have a personal best in a trout also, because, brook trout, I've never caught one, not through the ice. Yeah, no, I haven't. I've never caught a brookie through the ice either, and something I definitely want to do someday. And I really appreciate Ian sending us pictures. I have to apologize. I'm a little slow sometimes getting those things on Instagram. Instagram makes it ridiculously difficult unless you're on a phone to post things. So that's something I'm trying to get more streamlined so I can do more of it. Hey, I did put something on Instagram this morning. I took a picture of my coffee. So in case you're wondering what kind of coffee I'm drinking, you can check Instagram. And I would mention that Jeff just does that because he likes to, not because we're sponsored by coffee companies or anything. We are officially sponsored by nobody. We're sponsored by my checkbook and your checkbook. Yes, exactly. Exactly. But thanks to Ian, thanks to everybody that sends us pictures and stories, and we just love listening to those and reading those stories when you guys email them in. It really keeps us motivated, I think, to keep doing the show. It's just really neat to see and see the people that get enjoyment out of the work that we're doing. So thank you very much for everybody that sends stuff in to us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, I totally do. And I really like it too, because I look at the people who aren't fishing in Minnesota, right? That's my home base, and that's what I know. This is what I've fished since I was a kid.
But I love seeing those other adventures because that's something we really like to do. We're going to North Dakota this year, which will be the first time I've fished there. But, just the different styles and how people are fishing. The fact that we've got people ice fishing in Korea listening to our show. I mean,
yeah, and I think
it's cool.
I think I put a picture from the fellow from Erie, Pennsylvania that was caught that big trout.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really neat. And I've driven through or by Erie on my way out east before. And it's this little corner of Pennsylvania that touches the Great Lake up there. Crazy. Pennsylvania's a crazy, long, big state. If you've ever driven through that thing, it's like almost worse than Nebraska. It goes forever. And you're on the turnpike, so you're driving like 50. So it is worse than Nebraska. At least Nebraska, you can drive 100. Well, you shouldn't, but you can. But don't. So I mean, it is really neat because you kind of get used to your little sphere of fishing. And I think one thing in doing this show I've realized is that people ice fish anywhere there's ice that you can walk on.
All right, so let's go on to our topic, which is cold weather gear. The polar vortex kind of inspired us to talk about this. And I know Jason's been looking at some different clothing options. And so I'll let him kick it off.
Yeah, I have. So Jeff and I were talking about topics, and we're like, well, what do we want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to talk about ice fishing cold weather gear. This fall, I did a boundary water trip with our buddy Oli, and it was a really super cold trip. The weather forecast was miserable. I think it was down to like 17 degrees one night. And so I had to look at the gear I had, and so I had to buy some more technical gear, like some fleece or some down, a down coat and a shell, because I've always been a Carhartt guy, or variation thereof, like the hired hand coat I wore for years. I still have that. I just had that coat on last night. I still have it.
Okay, I expect today on Instagram for a picture of you wearing the hired hand jacket.
It's kind of like a fat guy in a little coat now. I bought that coat when I was like 17.
Just don't flex your arms so the back rips out.
Exactly. Just tear it out. No, so I've always worn Carhartt type stuff, the heavy denim type clothes with the insulated and off you go. And I have my bibs that I wear for all my outdoor stuff are the Carhartt Arctic bibs. They're really heavy duty bibs. And I don't work outside. So, I mean, Carhartts are great for construction and stuff too, but I've always bought them for my outdoor activities. And what I've come to realize is while they do a wonderful job of keeping me warm, there's some things they don't do real well, like move. You kind of become the marshmallow man when you get all that stuff on. And so there's better ways to do it. And so this fall, that kind of opened my eyes to that. So I kind of was out, I've been doing some research on you've got the main ones. You've got like the Clam Ice Armor, the Striker, the Freybill, L&M Fleet up there in Minnesota's got some store brands. I'm sure Cabela's got some store brands of the bibs and coats now specifically made for the ice fishing. And it's really cool. A lot of them, like the Freybill ones and some of the other brands, they have kind of a built-in holders for your ice picks. They've got flotation in them now. And I don't know. I don't know if the flotation's like really necessary, and I think that adds some bulk to it too. So if I bought a set, I don't know that I would buy the flotation ones, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be nice for early ice, right? But this time of year, you'd be like, why am I dragging around this stuff? But
I know.
I haven't tried them. I would want to try them out and see how bulky they really feel. I always remember the Carhartts because Dave wears the Carhartts quite a bit too. And I always remember the other drawback of those things were the ice balls you'd get around your zippers by your boots. Remember, like you'd walk around and you'd get like snowballs to everything.
And when you run the auger, you end up with iced up ankles, and
they're not waterproof. I mean, they're not.
No, the Arctic ones are water resistant, but they're not waterproof when you kneel in the water and this and that.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest the bulk, and then the fact that you're collecting all that moisture, and then if you're in an ice castle or you're in a cabin, you don't always have access to a dryer to dry that stuff out. So then it just is wet for days, and then you lose all that insulation properties too. So a lot of these, the ones I mentioned are all from the knees on down, they're waterproof, and the up tops are really water resistant. And so they put an insulation in there, and then they're windproof. And that's probably the biggest advantage, is that's going to keep in all your heat. And I have to give props to Ole. This is where he's been kind of ahead of the curve, is because he's worn that clam ice armor for 15 years.
Oh yeah,
probably.
Yep.
I mean, it's still the same outfit.
Yep, it's got the burn hole in the pocket from the ice auger.
Pocket from the exhaust on his ice auger. And I mean, he's rocked that thing, that setup, for a long time, and it's really, really worked well for him. So,
and Jay, you mentioned the windproof.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal.
It is.
It's a big deal because even, I remember last year when we were on Leech, it was really windy, and you're also in a snowmobile, and they go forward and create their own wind. It was 25 below or something last year. I can't remember exactly the temperature, but it was cold. And when we were driving across the ice, I could feel that wind going through my snow pants. And they're pretty beefy, but they clearly are not windproof. So just the fact that I was warm, but the air was coming through, that's a big deal.
And I would say the same experience with the Carhartts is they're not obviously made for snowmobiling. And so same thing with that windproofness, you really get, the wind comes in and it takes your heat away. So, that in the bulk, I think as I've gotten older, I hate to talk about this, but as you get older, you're not as mobile. And so, you start looking for things that, well, if this is decreasing my mobility already, and then I'm already not as mobile as I'd like because I'm old and fat. And, so that those two things,
guilty.
Yeah, those two things work against each other, and it's not what you need in your life. So, I also was curious, as I started looking at some of this, to see who has, clothing for women too, because a lot of women are starting to get more into ice fishing and coming out
Jay,
on their own.
I was worried you were going to tell me that you wanted to wear women's ice armor.
Some of those colors look good on me. So don't try to put me in your box, man. Trust me, I can talk the talk if you want to go down this road. But
all right, moving on. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, and I like the fact that women are shaped differently than us, because that's what makes them attractive to me.
Oh, I like that too.
And
I like that too.
But it also means they need clothing that fits them. And my wife, I think like yours, has troubles reaching things off top shelves. And so, she can't wear men's bibs. They do not, you just roll them up to the knees. So looking for clothing that is made for women. And so Stryker has some stuff for the ladies. I found Clam did as well. I didn't find that Freybuild did. There's not a ton of options out there, which is kind of disappointing. And all of them have a pink element to them, I assume, just because they assume all women like pink.
Purple?
Pink or purple look like most of them. So I would encourage, if the owner of Clam Ice Armor and Stryker, I'm assuming they listen to our show, is I would encourage you to get more of a ladies line, so that the gals can come out fishing, because a family that plays together stays together, right? Is that how that works?
I think that's something like the saying, Jay.
Is that it? No, and you see a lot of the young gentlemen, they'll take their special lady friends out ice fishing for the first time, and you got to get those patterns started when they're young, right? Because, after 20 years, it's hard to change their ways.
So I will say that, Jay, in the last episode, you talked about Sherry having the whole down feather incident.
Yes, she did.
Right?
Yes, she blew up.
So I will tell you that is like more ice fishing than my wife has done in the last 20 years. So
yeah.
So she fully supports me going ice fishing, but does not go.
But, and I wonder, though, if some of that is like we've acquired the gear to really be warm, and comfortable.
Yes.
And so, if you don't have the right gear, you don't have as, you can have fun, but if you're not as comfortable, clearly it's harder to have fun. And so it's kind of wonder, if you build it, they will go fishing. And maybe we don't want them to go fishing, but I think we do.
Oh, I think we do. I think we do.
Definitely.
It kind of goes back, and we talked about this when we had the kids with fishing episode last year, but I love catching fish, and man, there's nothing more exciting than pulling a big walleye through the hole or catching a bunch of crappies or sunnies but I also love to watch people who don't fish get that excitement because, we've done this once or twice, and the things that excite them aren't going to excite us. My kid will think it's the coolest thing ever to catch a couple crappies, and, I might be like, they're kind of small. Let's move on.
Do you actually tell him that? Do you crush his little soul? Say, yeah, put those little things back. You didn't do very good. Do better.
Do better. Yeah, it's fishing's a sport now. I mean, our school has fishing in a fishing team, so I guess I can be that kind of parent, like that's going to be like, go back and catch bigger fish.
If you helped run if you started an ice fishing club at your kid's school, could you write off your fish shack as like a nonprofit deduction or some stinking thing?
So here's the thing that happened this year, and hopefully this isn't getting too deep, but so the tax laws changed and the minimum deduction changed, right, Jay? You know this about this now? I haven't
paid attention. I don't make enough money to worry about. No, I do, but the point of it is that deductions aren't really a thing for me. They're not a thing anymore. Oh, that's right. They did change. I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, they're a thing, but the number is so high. I think the minimum deduction, and I am not a tax attorney, and oh my gosh, I'm sorry for talking about taxes on an ice fishing show, but I believe that the minimum is $24,000 now. So unless you can deduct more than $24,000, you just take the standard deduction, is how I understand it from my tax.
Okay. So that's not a thing. So move on from that bad advice.
Move on. But again, check with your tax person. I am not a tax person.
I'm not either.
All right, let's stop talking about taxes.
So going back to clothing.
Yes. So my goodness, we're wandering this morning. Is this a morning thing?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. So
my coffee, I'm all hopped up on coffee.
Maybe that's it. Versus like the beer, we kind of slow down and fall asleep, and now we're like, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the ice fishing show.
If you want to get the real effect, play this like 2 times.
2 times the speed. We just speed this one up so it's like a 30 minutes. Oh my God. All right, I'm moving on. Going back to the program. So you always hear about, you should layer when it's cold out. And I think you kind of do that naturally because you keep putting on clothes till you're warm. They always talk about a base layer. And so I'm going to break that down for you. What is a base layer? Long johns. That's what a base layer is. It's long johns.
So I wear Under Armour.
I wear long johns from Fleet Farm.
Which is like that tight stuff, the tight Under Armour. I really like it. But they're just long johns. They're just tighter. They hold everything in. I like it what it does for my figure.
Moving on. What I recommend though, when you're looking for the long johns, is try to get away from cotton, to like a polypropylene or a mix type synthetic long john. And you don't need to spend, God honest, you do not need to spend $50 on a pair of long underwear. You can go to a Fleet Farm and pick up some long johns for like $10 for top and $10 for a bottom. So, the really fancy stuff, does it work? Yeah, it works. Is it better? I suppose. But is it worth an extra $100 a set? Not in my opinion. But if you want to do it, do it. But I wanted to mention that. And then, a shirt and then a fleece, kind of a layer. You can have like, those Columbia or just the regular little fleece jackets you might wear in the fall over the top of that. And then a down vest or coat, and then a windbreaker. If you're not doing so then if you've got your ice armor coat, you would do the down and then your ice armor coat over the top. And then you're good to like 30, 40 below if you have all that.
Yeah, that's exactly the layering I do. I have when you say shirt, I actually wear 2 shirts. So I put a t-shirt on, and then over that I do a long sleeve, one of those like waffly kind of shirts.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I don't know if they call them thermal.
Yeah, like
a
whatever, thermal Henley.
Yeah. Oh, Henley. I like it, Jay. Fancy. And then I have a fleece that does not have a hood because I get too many hoods. because I usually like those collared fleeces because those are pretty warm. I have a down vest. I don't do it very often because it's kind of puffy.
It is. I've seen that.
If it's really cold, that vest kind of locks in your core heat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really does, but it keeps your arms kind of mobile. Otherwise, if you go down all the way to your wrists, sometimes you start looking like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So
yeah, absolutely.
And that windbreaker that you said, or that outside layer, that's where like those Predator or Striker or Ice Armor, that's where they come across. And I know Ole will support this too, but he has just I don't think they're not insulated, but they're very lightly insulated because they have usually two kind of versions, right? Like the extreme ones that are more insulated, and then kind of I don't know, they're not windbreaker, but they're thinner, and those work better for layering because they're waterproof and they're windproof, but they're not super thick, right?
And I would go that route personally because I think, you can always add a layer, but if your outerwear, which is designed to keep you from getting blown over by the wind and keep your knees dry, is too warm, then you're kind of in a pickle. And
yep.
And so I would prefer to layer versus have, and that's kind of the situation I'm in with the Carhartt, is they're so warm that if it's a decent day out, I'm not going to wear them because by the time I get to where I'm going, I'm going to have a heat stroke.
And I don't have one of those like branded ice fishing suits, but I actually have. It's a Columbia jacket. I don't think the brand matters that much, although I kind of like Columbia. It might be that they have an outlet next to my house.
That could be it,
and that's why I go there. So I usually get pretty good deals. But those jackets are thinner, like the Striker suits and Ice Armor suits. So if I think about the jackets I used to wear when I was a kid, they were big and puffy and probably weren't down, but were filled with some kind of fill, right? But these newer ones, and mine's dual layer, so you can zip out the inside, so the outside's waterproof, but then the inside one has, I don't know, it looks like tin foil or something, but it's not, some kind of techie looking stuff on the inside, but they're not real thick, and they're pretty nice. And I think almost every jacket that you can buy now is kind of like that. They're not super thick and puffy. They're thinner, which is nice.
And that I have trust issues with that, and I'm slowly working through that. Like where you look at a coat and it's like, well, this thing's thin. How's this going to keep me warm? And they do, because of that. They're windproof, or the material that they're using in them for fill is better than probably the pillow filling that our coats as kids had. Hey, can we move on to hands?
Yeah, so we're talking about just upper body, right? So we're saying the ideal thing is, you said long johns though, like top and bottom long johns, right?
Absolutely.
Shirt and pants. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other layer that I add to my bottom, we have the bibs, or I actually wear pants because I get tired of the bibs crunching my stuff. So I actually don't usually wear bibs. I wear pants.
Go on.
Well, you know what I mean. When you wear bibs, you like lean over and they like kind of, they squish you sometimes. So, I usually on the bottom, I wear my base layer, long johns, Under Armour is what I have. But then you also, the next layer, I bought these off of eBay. They're like fleece pants. And so they have, they look really funny actually. So you can buy them off of eBay. They're like military surplus. So they're short because they only go to your boots so that they don't wick the moisture up from the bottom because they're fleece. So if they were long and went to the bottom of your boots, they would get water in them and stuff. So they go over your long underwear, but underneath your kind of exterior layer of your bibs or your snow pants. And they actually have bibs that go over the top of your arms. And so they're like fleece bibs that just cover probably from your, I would say, mid stomach area all the way down to about where your boots go. And those really, that extra layer really makes a difference on my legs.
Huh.
So I wear those. They were like on eBay for like cheap, like $15 or $20. They're like military surplus.
Huh. Interesting.
And I really like those because you figure on the top you've got a fleece. Why wouldn't you put a fleece on the bottom? So
I guess I never thought about it like that.
And I actually don't, when I wear those, I sometimes won't wear jeans, right? Because jeans are kind of a pain. You got all these layers on, and I don't know, they don't always work for me. So I'll wear that base layer and then those fleece pants. Sometimes I'll wear jeans, but usually with fleece pants, I just wear those, and then I put my snow pants over the top of those.
Okay. So the same kind of theory, the layering.
Yeah, it's a layering theory. It's just on the bottom. Instead of just your snow pants and your base layer, you have that middle layer of fleece. And I think that air pocket also gives you some that air in the middle retains some of that heat too. Because if you're too tight and everything, there's nowhere for the heat to kind of hang out.
I thought you were usually wearing your skinny jeans when you went fishing.
Skinny jeans. Yeah. Although, not to get into skinny jeans because I don't wear skinny jeans, but
sure.
I do. And I'm sure, Jason, you can appreciate this too. And hopefully we're not going too far just in the style. And oh my gosh, we've been doing this for a long time. We better move on. But the jeans that I wear are stretchy now.
They are stretchy, which I appreciate.
I know. Isn't that awesome? I love it. And they're like even gusseted in the right places. So things don't get crunched. Oh, they're great.
Start calling you Captain Crunch.
All right. Now we can move on to we've got our legs covered. We've got the top of our body covered, but our hands and face and stuff, we're kind of cold.
Yeah. So hands, I think I usually bring a couple pair of hand covering items with me when I fish. I have a pair of just regular gloves that I need for when I'm drilling holes and putting up the ice shack and this and that. But then I tend to really switch into a pair of mittens. And I think any good pair of mittens, I use the Ice Armor clam ones. I bought those years ago because they were waterproof. And, and they work really well. But I caution on, there's a lot of gloves out there that say these are waterproof. And be careful with those because some of those put kind of a cheap, crappy lining inside and call them waterproof. And what happens is your hands sweat. And I've never been a big fan either. They like the neoprene gloves because, yes, they keep your hands dry, but your hands sweat. So they basically boil in their own sweat inside and they get cold. And so
yum.
I do not like, you like that? I do not like neoprene gloves or socks or any of that different neoprene stuff they make. I just think that they don't do long term what you need for a day outside. And so you want to have a good mitten. If your hands get really cold, a good mitten and you can chunk a hand warmer in there, and I think you're good to go. A chopper, a leather chopper with a wool liner, those kind of really old school, but there's a reason that it works. It absolutely works. And you don't need to spend $100 on a pair of gloves. You can go to your local farm store and get a good leather chopper, which is a leather mitten, and put a wool liner in that thing, and you're going to be good to go because that leather is going to protect the wool and keep the wind out of it, and generally waterproof it. And that wool is going to keep your hand nice and warm. So I think hands are pretty simple, but I think they're also the easiest to screw up and be really sad about.
Yeah, I do the same thing you do, Jay. I think I have Frable ones, but they're the same concept of what you got. I had Ice Armor ones for a long time and they wore out. I feel like this warm gear, especially like those things, I find that when they're new, they work pretty well and they keep your hands warm. But, as they get older, like 5 to 7 years, they kind of lose some of their warmth.
Well, they do because the insulation becomes compacted. Right. And when that insulation gets compacted, it loses its effectiveness. Same reason you shouldn't store a sleeping bag in its stuff sack. You should hang it. So
there's a fight I have with my wife. Why are all these sleeping bags laying around?
Yeah, there's a reason for that. So they don't get squished and stop keeping me warm. I think feet are the hardest thing. I struggle with keeping my feet warm. I have like a big pair of Cabela's pack boots, that have I'm like really tall when I wear them because I'm already pretty tall. And they're like 2 inches thick. So then I'm like 6'4" when I wear them, to try to keep your feet off that ice and keep them insulated. But it's still difficult for me, at least, to keep my feet warm no matter. So I don't have like great advice. I do the wool socks or the synthetic socks. I make sure they're not too tight. I do all that stuff, and some days it's really good and some days it's not. But I have learned what you need to do every night is you need to take that liner out of that boot at night and dry it, or if it doesn't have a liner, you need to put it on a boot dryer, because otherwise you're toast the next day because your feet sweat inside that boot and it gets wet and it gets cold.
Two different pair of boots, depending on what I'm doing. I have these pair of boots from Cabela's that are like 1,200 grams of thin slate that I can't drive my car with because they're so big. I can't differentiate the brake from the gas.
Yep.
Right? I mean, like these things, they have two different liners. Like you put one liner on, you put the other, and it takes like 15 minutes to get them on. But they're great. They keep my feet warm. And when we're like fishing all day and on the snowmobiles and driving all over, that's what I'll have on my feet. But, and I also, those feet warmers, those toasty toes that you introduced me to, those are awesome. I use those. If I'm out all day long, I will put those in my boot.
See, I have a love-hate thing with those. I think there's a timing to that. If you put them on right away, then your feet sweat.
Yep.
And then you have that problem with the sweat, and then it gets cold and you're cold. And then if you wait too long, they don't give you enough relief. When your feet get cold, you got to take your boots off and put them on, which isn't a big deal, but then your feet get cold and you can't get it back. So it's kind of like you got to time them right, at least for me.
Yep. Yeah. And I agree. I agree. But I usually, if we're going to be fishing all day, I'll just put them in. Hand warmers, though, those things are awesome. Like you said, you put them in your mittens. And my favorite time to do that is, usually when we fish, we'll go back in. Jason will be grumpy, but we'll go back in after that, right?
We're not going in because I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy because we're going in, just for the record.
Yes. So it gets dark, and this is always the critical time when I get the most cold, right? It's gotten dark, it's cold, and now you have to pull tip-ups, you have to pack up stuff, and your hands are going to be cold. So usually about 20 minutes or a half an hour before we pack up, I'll crank open a couple of those hand warmers and shove them in my mittens, because then once you get everything packed up, you can stick your hands into the warm mitten and be ready to go for the ride home, versus your hands are cold and you can't get them warmed up. Because even though the mittens will keep your hands warm, once they get super cold, it's really hard to get them warmed up.
Yeah, I agree. I would mention on hand warmers, what's old is new again. The lighter fluid catalytic heater hand warmers are back again. They're on the shelves again.
Huh.
So if you guys haven't seen those, Jeff, I always say this in every show, and I don't think I ever send you the links, but I'll send you a link to one. And I have a really, really old one that it was my grandpa's, and it's just what they are is a metal deal, and you fill them with lighter fluid, and there's a wick, and you light it. And it basically slowly burns that lighter fluid inside this metal box, metal hand warmer, and it keeps your hands warm. You put it in a little bag, and if you need it hotter, you give it a little bit more oxygen. If you don't, you shut it down. And they're awesome from a couple standpoints. Number one, they're more environmentally friendly, I think, because you're not dealing with a wrapper and you don't have to throw away that activated charcoal or whatever that stuff is. Pack it when you're done. They also put out a ton more heat. So if you really need to get warmed up, they work really, really well. You don't want to skimp on just a tip for those. You'd want to buy high quality lighter fluid. You would like the Zippo or the higher quality stuff. Don't buy the Dollar General cheap, crappy lighter fluid, because it'll keep you warm but stinks. But definitely with kids, I think they work really nice. Not like for little tiny kids, but like 10, 11-year-old, kind of that when they start getting a little bit older where they understand how this thing works, and that'll keep them warm and how to work it. But they do definitely put out some nice heat. You can't shove them in your boots though, because they're big.
Gotcha.
They're kind of like a little bit bigger than the size of a deck of playing cards.
So when you go extreme, Jay, I've done a mask a few times. A mask a lot, a face mask. Those are important to bring if it's really cold. And goggles, once or twice I've done goggles. It's pretty extreme.
Yeah, I don't do face masks because they fog my glasses up. What I found is what I like though is the neck, like a neck gaiter, I think they call it.
Oh, yeah.
And just because that you zip your coat up kind of the base of your neck, and then you got that air infiltration around your collar, and it really chills the heck out of you. So if you
Yep.
put one of them little neck gaiter things on, and it keeps that neck area nice and protected, and that really goes a long ways to keeping you warm. Other than that, I grow a natural face mask every winter.
Yeah, I guess I do have a fleece thing that it's kind of like a hood and a neck gaiter thing in one. So you can like put your head through it and it goes around your neck. But then if you get cold, you can put it over your head.
Yeah.
And that works pretty good. The only downside is when you put those things all the way over your head, your peripheral vision gets very tunnely. And that's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But,
so like, for example, if you're going for a tip up and someone's got an angle on you, you can't see it.
you can't see them. Exactly.
Just all of a sudden
Exactly.
you're flat and you're like, what happened?
All right. Well, I think we covered it pretty well,
Yeah.
Jay. I don't know if we with these methods that we have talked about, Jason and I have fished down to -40.
Yeah. I mean, we have. And that was back before we really had expensive gear. It was just layering and layering. And, you know, you can
Yep.
always use the old time stuff. You got the wool type material. You can go, it doesn't have to be a high dollar thing. You can go to
Nope.
your local Goodwill or secondhand store and find wool pants that some old guy dug out of his closet. Absolutely. You can find this stuff, a nice wool coat, you know, a flannel, insulated quilted flannels. I've worn those for years. So you don't need to buy, I mean, the Striker stuff is awesome. The Ice Armor stuff, the Fraybill stuff is awesome. But, you know, really, you don't have to have that stuff if you think about the layers and what you want to do. You want to, you know, hold that heat in. You want to build a little space with the fleece to trap the heat and not squish it all out of you. And then you want to break the wind around you. And if you keep those things in mind, you're going to be really comfortable out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Luckily, I feel like, at least for me, when I was young and had fewer dollars and could afford fewer fancy things, my body put up with more, right? And now that I'm older and maybe have a few more dollars to dedicate to my hobbies, I can afford some of the things that keep me warmer. But, you know, I need that because I'm older and my body doesn't tolerate it quite as much as it used to.
No, well, I hear that. That's what prompted kind of this whole topic today.
Yeah, exactly.
Was I'm thinking about, okay, how do I get myself more mobile out there without, you know, without sacrificing the warmth? So,
yep.
Jeff,
Awesome.
you going to
All
do the
right,
legend today?
Yeah, I think so. And it's
Awesome.
related to cold.
To the polar
So-
vortex.
Polar vortex.
We didn't have
All right,
fancy
so-
names for that kind of stuff back in the day. It just was cold out.
Well, and I think this is part of the 24-hour news cycle or whatever needs
Yeah.
something, but I've noticed that like they name the storms now. Winter storm, I don't know, Billy or Smith or whatever. I don't know, you know, like I'm like, it's just a snowstorm.
I
We have
know.
them all the time. Why do we need a name for everyone?
I have no idea.
Anyways, on that editorial note, but yeah, so this was at Stone Lake many years ago when the red shed was still, well, it wasn't red.
It was green.
But we still called it the red
We
shed,
did.
right? So we were up on Stone Lake, and this is Jason's old place, and it was a trailer, right, Jay? I mean, it was a,
It was like a 1950 something travel trailer.
right. And this was our home base. And there's no electricity. There's only the outhouse. I'm just trying to paint a picture here, right? I mean, we loved it. It was great. And we went up there. And every year we schedule the thing, and weather is the weather. I mean, you never know. Always seems like it's cold when we go, like really cold. But so we go up to the lake and we get there, and it is hip deep snow. You remember?
Oh
Wasn't
my
the
gosh,
snow, like,
yes.
I mean, people say hip deep snow and you're like, whatever. No, this was like hip deep snow. And so there's not plowed. The neighbor had it plowed, but you didn't have it plowed up to your cabin because nobody really goes up there in the winter at that time. And so we parked in the neighbor's driveway, lot, whatever. And I don't know, how far do you think that of a walk is that, Jay? You think like,
Oh, it's probably not terrible, you know,
No.
a couple 100 yards.
right, in literally hip deep snow. And so we had to trudge all of our gear up to the red shed, which we bring a lot of gear. And I'm just trying to paint this picture. So we're up there, and we get up there the first night, and it is like minus 40 degrees below zero.
And
outside.
it was because you had the Explorer up there, right?
Yeah.
And it had one of those where the thermometers
Yes.
on the car, and it said negative 40.
Yep.
And what did I say? I said, let's go fishing.
Yeah. So that's what we did. I mean, we didn't turn the car off until we knew the cabin heated up, until the trailer heated up, because I was worried the car wouldn't start again once we needed to. So we went fishing, right, Jay?
We did.
First night. I mean, we got up there late. It was late. Like, we're talking like midnight or 1 a.m, right?
Yeah, it was.
It was late.
It was late.
So we get out there and we set up. I think we didn't even have the shack set up yet. We were out in the open. We were going to set up the shack, but it hadn't been set up yet. And at this time, we had the suitcase shack, the 6x8 suitcase shack. So we get out there and we drill a hole, and Ole opens up, because at the time, I think he might have been the only one with a Vexilar.
Yeah, I imagine he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got a hole drilled. I guess the auger worked good. And he opens up his Vexilar case. And in the Vexilar case, it's an FL8, and it has a soft case on it. And then it has like a little plastic window. And that plastic window, I think, is to be able to have the case shut, and you can still see the flasher, right? And so, but you can also have a zipper around it. So he unzips it and flips up this little plastic window that goes into the FL8 so that you can see it, because, I don't know, we didn't want to look through a plastic window. So as he does that, it goes and it cracks.
I remember his face. He was so sad.
It must have been new, because, I mean, he was
I think
like...
it was.
Oh.
I think it was like a year or two old. I mean, it was still shiny.
Yeah, it was still shiny. So... And then we have this conversation that we have sometimes when gear breaks. We're like, come on. Like, this is ice fishing gear. I know it's cold, but it should be designed for this. And so we have this venting discussion, right? I mean, it's just a window on the Vexilar bag, but, you know, when things are new, it's hard to see them break. So then we look at the tag inside. There's like a little instruction tag, and it says on the inside, this is good till minus 30.
We had exceeded that specification.
So
I think it's hilarious it had a tag.
It did. It was like a little thing inside, and it said, like, you know, we've tested this to minus 30, and it was minus 40. So I guess we exceeded the what it was allowed to work for.
It was not covered under warranty at that point, I guess. I don't know.
I can guarantee you, if I go to Ole's garage right now, his Vexilar FL8 that he still has is in the package with a piece of clear tape over that crack.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. All right. Well, that's a great story. Thanks for that trip down memory lane, Jeff. That was sure a heck of a cold year.
It was, for sure.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time.
Cheers.
All the time, my baby going fishing too. I bet your life, your sweet wife will catch more fish than you. Many fish bite if you got cool bait. Yeah, here's a little tip I'd like to relate. Many fish bite if you got cool bait. Yeah, I'm going fishing, my baby going fishing, I'm going fishing too. Run me out of my mind, say, can I go fishing with you? I took him on down to the fishing hole. Now what do you think he'd do? Pull the catfish by the bottom of the pond. Now he laughed and jumped and he was real gone. Yeah, many fish bite if you got cool bait. Yeah, I'm going fishing, my brother going fishing, I'm going fishing too. Baby, put them in the pan, cook them till they're nice and brown. You can catch them, release them out that trophy fish up just to keep them around.